Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show we call Beyond the Ropes with myself, Laurie, and my co-host Melissa. Melissa, how are you doing today?
Good, I'm good.
That's very good. Today I thought we would talk about a topic that's been discussed mainly in UK boxing circles, and that is a lot of people feel that there's been a recent decline in British boxing. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. I'm going to try and keep it short. I've made a list here. First one, people are saying lack of world champions. Now, you may be aware, Melissa, but back in 2016, there was a height. We had 14 male world boxing champions. Now we're down to just 2. In fact, it was 1, Nick Ball, but recently, Lewis Crocker beat Paddy Donovan, so that's now 2. But it's an all-time low. But anyway. They're saying that the promoters divide, the rivalry between people like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, and recently Ben Shalom has had a detrimental effect on the amount of shows and the amount of, events happening around the country. Don't know if you may have heard of Anthony Croller's recent comments where he's talked about the decline of small hall shows. He said that boxing is in a major crisis with a lot of the shows and a lot of the attention going to Saudi Arabia. Has meant domestically, it's affected the domestically scene and left it pretty derelict. Apparently, British boxing, its foundations in terms of the amateur stuff at the grassroots, they're struggling. A lot of gyms are closing, limited funding, limited resources, coaching staff. The rise of MMA and other combat sports like bare knuckle, that has meant that boxing is taking a bit of a hit there. Then there's a rise of YouTube and celebrity boxing, misfit stuff. That's impacted apparently negatively on boxing. Fan disengagement. A lot of the big shows taking place today are being taken place behind firewalls, meaning that people have to pay, and that means that there's less viewing. And basically what they call a media and cultural impact decline, where it means where boxing's not as, it's not like a mainstream sport in a way that football, cricket and tennis and stuff like that is. So, and it's diminishing, they're saying. So all of those factors, I've tried to be very quick because I'm aware of time, have meant that British boxing is going through a bit of a hard time. So we are. But so let's discuss. Let's start with the lack of world champions. What do you put that down to?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what it's down to. Like, certain things happen in cycles, right? So it could just be that we're in like a low cycle at the moment. But I think probably like the fact that, you've listed a whole bunch of stuff there that I think probably adds or like works into the whole thing with the lack of the world champions, right? Because of course, if there is less funding at grassroots level and less attention and energy going into the amateurs, a lot of people with the amateur pedigree go on to be world champions, so there's a bit of that. But yeah, I do think that things happen in cycles, and we are, I'm a bit of a glass half full character anyway, but I like to think that we are sort of watching the new wave, the new generation come through that are going to be our future, like stars of the sport, like the Moses Ataumas and stuff. So yeah, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there's no doubt that there has been a reduction in the amount of world champions. I mean, like I said, it was just Nick Ball until the other day when Lewis Crocker beat Paddy Donovan in that all-Irish clash for I think it was for the IBF Welterweight Championship of the world. Now, some people may look at that and just say that we're not producing the talent that we used to produce. And if you just look at the stats, then you would say yes. But then, like you said, Melissa, at the moment, we currently probably have the most outstanding talent in the whole of boxing. Moses Itauma, we've also got people like Adam Azim coming through.
Right.
So you're right, it does go in cycles. So let's hope that in the coming next few years we'll be all right. What did you make of the promoters divide? Like, so people are saying that this rivalry, it's not as heated as it once was between Matchroom and Frank Warren and them, man. They seem to be a little bit closer because of Turkey. But then you've got Ben Shalom, he's come in, and what people are saying that what that does is fragment the sport a little bit because they're having shows that rather with each other. But unfortunately, it's impacting negatively on the British boxing scene. Do you think that's the truth or not?
Yeah, I do think that definitely is the truth. I mean, I would really like to discuss in detail like the Saudi influence, right? Because I think that so much of where we are at culturally with boxing has to do with the Saudi input and influence and influx of money. But one thing that is quite I have mixed views about it, but one thing that I think is quite positive is that they've managed to get like Frank and Eddie in one room and like, you know, under one banner, the DAZN banner, which means like scheduling wise, things are a little bit, you know, like smoother and more in alignment. And I guess the one like big name promoter that falls outside of that is Ben Shalom, and of course he's now moved to the BBC, and you know they've scheduled the fight on the same, which
it's the same night as the Fabio Wardley
that's
and Joe
right
Parker fight, which is kind of a little bit of an example of what I was saying.
Well,
about
it's
the
a complete
promoters
fragmentation,
clashing.
isn't it?
Yeah,
you
so-
know, you've got like two big fights happening on the same night, and the viewers are going to be like, well, who do we tune into, right? So there is that stuff going on. I think the promoter rivalry is probably always going to exist to some sort of level, because again, boxing is an ego sport, and it's an ego sport across all the different genres that people are involved with. Like it's an ego sport with the promoters, with the managers, and you know, with the boxers themselves. So yeah, I don't doubt that there is always going to be a little bit of tension with promoters, but I guess the one thing that is great that Turki Al Sheikh's influence has created is bringing two of the mainstay promoters under one banner.
No, I agree. I do, and listen, I think it's quite healthy to have rivalries in sport in terms of promoters, because obviously, if it's just one promoter cleaning up the boxes, it's not a good look, is it, to have just one guy? So, look, you need independent promoters, you need your top promoters. So I've got no problem with that. It's just like when we said, when there's a clash of dates,
That's an
so
issue.
obvious like that. That is when things go a little bit wrong.
Yeah, and also like if you think about it, because of course you've got Dana White of the UFC, right? And because he's like the guy, it means he can make a lot of unilateral decisions, right? Which are really problematic if you like are on like bad terms with him, or you're in the doghouse.
He monopolizes things.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. So I think it's healthy to have lots of different stakeholders, but the clash of date thing is an issue.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you mentioned Turkey, and we both said Turkey is good for the game. However, former boxing world champion Anthony Crolla has recently been interviewed, and he said that UK boxing is in, quote, a major crisis. And one of the main reasons he attributes to that is the fact that a lot of the attention is going on the really big Saudi shows. And he, according to him, and a few other people have heard say the same thing, and listen, you're in the business of journalism, so you will know more than me even. He said that that's impacted the domestic scene really badly, and there's not enough shows and not enough people attending. What's your views on that?
I have a lot of views on that one. I think that okay, so it's just complicated, right?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm all ears, man.
So I think that it's really great. We've seen Turkey do a lot for boxing in terms of like he's delivered on some big ass fights,
shows.
right? Ones that we have enjoyed, some we've enjoyed together, where you're just like, oh, I didn't think I would see this fight in a million years. And that you can't deny is awesome for boxing, right? Like as a fan of the sport, I've absolutely benefited from it, and I would never discredit him for that. However, I do think that there is something to be said about if you're putting all these big shows on in Saudi, which is hard to reach, it costs money to get there, it costs money to stay there, you know, you're taking away boxing from the British fans in terms of them being able to attend and enjoy a night out. And
that's
you know,
the lifeblood of this professional sport, really.
right. And also it's like it's a lifeline, yes, and also as we've spoken about before, it's not the most affluent sport, and it doesn't have the most affluent. It does, but it also has people who are just like, you know, a hard day's work for a hard day's pay,
grassroots
right?
stuff,
You know?
yeah.
So if they can't get to these shows, they can't enjoy it, then that's going to be a bit of an issue. And it means that, well, where does it leave boxing? When all the glitz and the glamour has sort of worn off? Or like, you know, not everything that glitters is gold, and when all the big fights have been made, then what? You know? And there is something to be said. I do agree a little bit with what Anthony Crolla said about UK boxing at that mid-level is probably in a little bit of crisis. However, you know, I do the presenting and punditry for TM14 and Nielsen Boxing. They are quote unquote small hall, but they have developed so much over the last year, and they've put a lot of funding into like their boxers. Their shows have grown. We see Johnny Clark's top tier shows have grown. Izzy's GBM shows have grown, and I do wonder if there is an argument to be made that there's a bit more space for these guys to grow because the Matrums and the Queensberries are in Saudi. So
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but we do need our grassroots boxing. But at the same time, I would say that Turkey has pretty much saved professional boxing. But that's a subject for another time. The rise of MMA and other combat sports. Now, we know MMA is pretty popular with a lot of people, including British people. It's bigger in America, but even so, it's pretty big here as well now. Then you've had the recent emergence of bare knuckle fighting. We saw James DeGale fight. I was going to say fight. I'm not sure if we could call that a fight. But anyway, so that is becoming more popular. And what a lot of people are saying is that is impacting negatively on boxing. Your views on that very quickly?
Don't really have that many views on it, if I'm honest. Don't know enough about it. I will say, though, that the UFC is a really, really strong brand and it attracts a lot of fans. And I think that probably boxing has a bit to learn about that. I don't know what that might be. I'm not into marketing. But I mean, I think that boxing, when you understand it, like all the like technicalities and stuff, is super, super exciting. But if you really just watch combat sports for like the violence of it, you might be more drawn to other combat sports.
Right, yeah, well said. Agreed. Although I must admit, I do like UFC and MMA. Not so sure about bare knuckle, but to me, the real combat
slapping one.
yeah, there's that as well. Yeah, that's not really taken off in this country yet. But is it power slap or something?
Power
like that?
slap, yeah.
Crazy to
Looks
me,
wild.
crazy. But so and there's that, and then of course there's the rise of YouTube and celebrity boxing. That's taken off, and a lot of people saying they prefer to watch that than regular boxing, which I always find hard to understand. But
I'm judging them. I'm judging them hard. Like my views on this. Like do your thing. Not my thing to watch. Right? Do your thing. I'm not watching it. I'd rather watch boxing.
Agreed. Likewise. And just very quickly, media and cultural impact decline. So basically, this is. A lot of people say that, well, I guess it's true. Boxing is not a mainstream sport. Every now and again it is. Like you get the Conor Ben Eubank and everybody's all over it. But on a day-to-day, boxing is not like football or many other sports.
Yeah.
It's, you turn to the back pages and there's stories about boxers or boxing fights coming. They only tend to cover the really big events. So, but that hasn't always been the case. Like back in the day when I was coming up, it was a lot more prevalent in mainstream. Not so much anymore. And people are saying that over the years that has led to the reduction in interest or cultural impact. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, right? It's so diffuse. And this is the thing that I think about boxing. Like, it is so diffuse. We have like we're 5-belt era. Back in the day when there was a world champion, it was like, that was the guy. You knew who the world champion was because there was one belt. And now boxing is so diffuse. It's hard to keep track of things. And I think that probably has led to this like cultural media decline that you speak of, because you have to really like kind of look quite far to find out who's at the top of the game in the different belts and stuff like this. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that.
So in conclusion then, would you say that those people have a point? Do you agree, disagree, or do you think it's a little bit of both?
I think we're at a crossroads in boxing, Laurie.
Right.
I think that we're at a cultural crossroads. We've only had a couple of years of the Saudi influence, and it's had some great things happen to boxing. And I think it's had some things that we're going to see the effects of in a couple of years. And I think that in about 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to answer that question a bit more clearly.
I think that's fair. I'm going to try and stay positive, man. I mean, I'm a passionate boxing fan. I hear what people like Anthony Corolla says about the small hall shows. That's a shame. I hope that changes. But then again, like I said, Turkey's come in, man, and he's revolutionised the sport. He's getting people to fight that would never have fought before. They just wouldn't do it. Now with the money there, they're having to take these fights. I think what Turkey's done with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, that's been good.
That's great.
Got them to work together. So I think largely it's been positive. There is that negative about British box affecting small hall shows, which is a shame if that's true. Well, I'm sure it is true. So, it's mixed. One thing I would say, though, and we haven't got time to cover it, maybe another time, I think that women's boxing is on the up and up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Definitely, compared to what it was. The standard is better. The fighters are better.
The pool is bigger.
And, So there you have it, people. That's our views on, is British boxing on the decline? I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, tune into the next one, myself and Melissa. Take care. Catch you on the next one. We're out.